this for me has become super interesting. I do a couple podcasts a week solely around if one person is listening to this pod and they get inspired to actually write the screenplay, actually do the thing, as opposed to sit on their ass and scroll their life away, that's in the win column. That's my goal.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Cup of Tea Critiques podcast, where we dive deep into cinema and industry topics so you can decide for yourself if they're your cup of tea. Ready for a deep look with a deep brew? This week, Stephen Puri, former studio executive at DreamWorks and 20th Century Fox and current CEO of the Suka Company, joins us for a conversation about flow states, show business, and the evolution of screenwriting.
It's fascinating, perhaps you will too. I didn't know what a flow state was before a couple of years ago. Mm-hmm. And I had an experience where I was like relating this to a friend of mine at dinner that night. And they were like, oh, dude, it's a flow state. How do you not know this? I'm like, I don't know if I'm an idiot, but that. So I did the research. Here's basically what it is. There was a Hungarian-American psychologist. He died like 3 years ago next month, I think. This guy, Mihai Csikszentmihalyi, and he had a thesis. He said, isn't it weird if you talk to high performers in different disciplines? They can be artists, athletes, scientists, inventors, whatever. And when these famous people talk about the state they go into, the concentrated state where they do the thing that makes them famous, the thing we know them for, they talk about the state very similarly, even though what they're doing is very different. So he did the research, he did the interviews, he did all that. At the end of it, he wrote a book called Flow. It's the seminal work on this. It's why we call it a flow state. And he said the greatest thing. He said, everyone I spoke to had their own word for this. Michael Jordan talks about being, when I'm in the zone, it's just me and the ball. Picasso talks about his muses. Einstein had his thought experiments. He's like, I chose this word flow because it was the most beautiful metaphor for what I found. We are all on the river paddling to move ourselves forward. Mm-hmm. But if you align your boat with the current, it carries you. It magnifies your efforts. And that is what these high performers have figured out how to do. So then a bunch of people obviously piled on, did research, like this guy, Charles Lim at Johns Hopkins. He was like, is this real? Is it a brain state? Or is it just you're really concentrating hard like any other day, right? So curiously, one of the things that Mihai had noticed was he had noticed this flow state theory he had, or his hypothesis, in rappers, like freestyle rappers, in jazz musicians, and people that reported at a certain point, I become lost in music. Like it's not a trio. It's all of us are just creating this living jazz improv, right? Or, you're rapping and like the verses are just kind of flowing. So this guy, Charles Lim at Johns Hopkins, said, hey, listen, let's do this. And when you feel like you're in flow, I want to throw you in an fMRI machine and see what's going on in your brain, right? Mm-hmm. So we did this. And what's interesting is when like the jazz artists felt they had dropped into flow, into being part of the music, their prefrontal cortex, which is that area of brain right behind your forehead, mm-hmm. It's the part that's like aware of yourself, you're self-conscious, you're second-guessing yourself. He's like, it's shut down. You were not watching yourself do this. You were actually in it. And that was how I discovered a flow state. I can talk about the characteristics of it and sort of how you get into it, but that was the big thing of Mihai going like, no, there's something more than just concentrating. There's some sort of neuro state that these high performers go into, and I want to know what it is.
Is it from your understanding, because you read the book, right? From your understanding, is it, something, is it intentional? Is there an intentional, some intentional effort, sounds redundant, that they make to put themselves there?
Here's the thing. So I'll tell you, my personal experience with it is I'm in Austin, Texas, same time zone as you. Not you, Chris. And I was flying to San Francisco, which is your time zone. On the flight, I thought, you know what? Tomorrow, the next day, I'm going to have a meeting with my team. There's a feature I wanted to mock up for what we were working on. I thought I'll do my hacky version in Figma and then show it to the team next day. And if there's like enthusiasm, we'll build it, right? Got on the flight. Alaska runs that nonstop. Captain's like, sorry, kids, Wi-Fi's out, see you at SFO. We take off. I start working. Like 15 minutes later, we start descending. And I thought, oh, we're at Dallas Fort Worth, like something's wrong with the aircraft. They're going to swap it out and tell us like, oh, the hydraulic system, here's a new plane. I looked down, over 2 hours and 40 minutes have gone by. I had no idea. I thought we were still in Texas. I don't know if you guys have done this. I had prepared myself for, when I land, I'll jump in the Uber, grab a sandwich in the hotel lobby, go up to the little hotel room and like work at the desk and then pass out, try and finish my work. In reality, my designs were done. I called my buddy from the Uber. I was like, hey man, I have a free night in SF. Do you want to have dinner? I related this to him. I was like, I had the weirdest experience. And he's like, that's a flow state. Like, that's a popular thing here in the Valley. Like, we know what that is. You should know what that is. So I actually, to answer your question, I first experienced a flow state by chance. It probably helped that the Wi-Fi was out on the plane. Huge menu. You know what I mean? No WhatsApp's coming in. Couldn't check a YouTube video. Couldn't check my email. Like, it sort of gave me a calm environment. I had my music with me, like locally on my laptop, right? And I dropped in. And that led me to obviously do more research and find there are actual intentional ways that you can develop a flow state practice. And once you see it, it's sort of like the matrix, like the ones and zeros. Once you know in yourself, you start to see other people who have that practice and they understand that. And you're like, okay, yeah, I clock you. You got that,
Interesting. It almost seems like it's almost instinctive. It reminds me of, this is unrelated, but it reminds me of driving a car. Once you've been driving a car for years, you don't really think about driving the car.
Like that
you can
highway
start
hypnosis.
From the north side. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Even in terms of being a musician, you've been doing it for a while. One of the things I've been working with a piano teacher for years now, and one of the things I struggle to do still after all these years is letting go. So you just have to let your hands go. You just have to let your fingers go. Stop thinking. She has to tell me that. Stop thinking. You have to just let them go.
Yeah. And there is a part of the being in that state of creation, whether you're creating music, you're writing code, you're writing a book, you're designing something, like there is a state where you do have to let go. And sometimes that means like with your prefrontal cortex we talked about, like shutting down that self-judgment, self-conscious, second-guessing part and just letting it flow.
You said on another podcast that it's there's like a 15 to 23 minute rule in terms of getting into flow state. Could you talk about that?
Yeah, it is something, and let me just preface, anything smart I say is because so many people have researched this, and I'm here to bring some of that knowledge. It's not like I'm smart, I just care about this stuff a lot, right? And there have been a lot of people dedicated their lives to it, so let's acknowledge. Now, I know what you're quoting, which is going back to Mihai, and even subsequent research, everyone agrees. You don't just go, I'm going to be in flow, and then bang, snap your fingers, and like, you're in Wonderland.
Yeah.
It actually takes usually up to 23 minutes, but more than 10, for the brain to get into that sort of like lulled consciousness where it shuts down the prefrontal cortex. Some conditions have to be true. Like even in his original book, Mihai said, all these high performers I met with, whose names you know, they don't get into the flow just doing anything. They have to believe the task is meaningful. They have to have skills that apply. So it's not Picasso throwing a basketball, and it's not Michael Jordan painting. And they have to be doing it at a level that challenges them. So it's not like Michael Jordan playing a high school, exhibition game. It's Michael Jordan in the finals. It's a game 7 at that state where like the world falls away. And he said, you have to acknowledge that people who have a serious flow practice, they've found things that help them get into flow. Like Riva, you were alluding to, it's not just I hope lightning strikes. And if you get interrupted, it takes you about the same amount of time to get back in. Like you can't just stop quickly, have a little chat with someone and then be like, okay, I'm still in flow, coding my website or, writing my book. It's like you kind of have to pick back up and go, let me drop back in. I know that was a long speech. Back to you.
No, that was helpful. I guess it does have to be. It reminds me. I always try to relate these things to something that's most familiar to me. In essence, we're saying that we have to have exercised or trained the muscles.
Yes.
Okay. That are related to, whatever activity that is that we want to flow with, so to speak. In Michael Jordan's case, it's the basketball. In a writer's case, it's the brain and perhaps the hand, depending on their writing process. So I'm understanding that correctly, right?
You are very much. And there's almost a more foundational question about this. Like, I talk a lot about flow. A lot of people ask me about flow. It's like, oh, it's a great way to concentrate or get things done. But there's a foundational layer that I think makes all of this more meaningful, which is why? Who cares? Like, so you're in flow, you're not in flow. Like, does this matter? And I think the thing that we have to acknowledge, like sort of the fundamental belief is, it matters if you believe you have something to contribute. If you think there's something that you are meant to do, then the tools that help you do it are very meaningful. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I mentioned to you, I think before we recorded, that my wife and I really burned us up is how many of the largest market cap companies on the stock market, their business model is steal your life, straight up. That is what they do. They go, the more time we can take out of people's lives that they are not writing a book, they're not writing a screenplay, they're not learning how to direct, they're not learning how to play piano, the more time we can get them to scroll and double tap, the more ads we show them, the more money we make. And they call our attention shareholder value. That's the code word in their reports, how much shareholder value we've created. In other words, we stop people from doing the thing that they're maybe capable of doing. And then you're like, I don't know what you believe, but I believe the reason I do what I do, I don't believe the question for us is, do we have something meaningful to contribute? I think we all have something great inside. I think the real question is, are you going to get it out or not?
Okay. Yeah.
Is there, with flow state, because the way we describe it makes it sound like a very individual thing, is there any collaborative element to it? I think about athletes, when athletes kind of go at a fan over and over and they kind of start talking trash to a fan, and I'm like, is that part of like bringing someone else into your flow state, or I don't know if there's a term for that. I saw you in your high school basketball career.
I know what you used to do. It's cool. We're not judging, okay? But yeah, it can be collaborative. Like you said, most people conceive of it as, Picasso awake all night creating Guernica for 14 nights or something like that, right? So it's an individual thing. But also you have to remember, one of his original sort of case studies was jazz trios, right? Where each of the participant drops in and it becomes a creation of the trio as opposed to three people playing different instruments in time, right? So, yes. But I'll tell you this, almost everyone I speak to, they're talking about flow as an individual thing.
Okay. Can we talk a little bit about, I'm real curious to know your thoughts on the influence of AI on writing. Yes.
Oh, that's a good one. That's like a tickle me Elmo question. Okay. So when people usually say AI right now, what they're talking about is large language models, right? LLMs. Right. And obviously AI includes machine learning, deep learning. There are a lot of different, flavors of AI, but I think we're talking about large language models where you could say, write me a screenplay, about people. So here's one of the things I noticed in my film career is there were, and I worked only in action films, as you know. That was like Die Hard, Wolverine, Transformers, Star Trek, stuff like that, right? So I'm not the guy that speaks about indie dramas or rom-coms or Adam Sandler movies, right? None of those. Right. But I'll say, in that area, you have about a dozen writers that are at the very top of that. The $1 Million Club, they're getting the best assignments. The studio's releasing one or two of the movies every year, right? And then you have a lot of journeyman sort of writers, hundreds, maybe thousands, that are cranking out something. It's obviously the numbers have gotten smaller since, the business has contracted for the past 10 years. But what's curious is the more you hear pitches, because I'm telling you, as a studio executive, every day you have people sitting around the coffee table in your office, 5 minutes of small talk, launch into a pitch, you listen to the pitch for 20 minutes, on to the next. And you just all day long, every week, right? Most writers write having seen a lot of movies. And it comes through in how they explain it. They go, it's like that scene in The Matrix, blah, 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 and then, this, and then what happens? And then when he's on the bus, it's still like the scene from the thing, blah, blah, and it's a conversation, right? And you can tell that. It's almost like looking at a photocopy from a book. Like, it has the words on it, but it's not the same quality of text, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So when you get to that top tier, the ones that write the stuff, you go, damn, you got to see this movie. They generally write from their understanding of people, of life. Now, LLMs are just Google autocomplete on steroids. Like when you're typing it in Gmail and it says, oh, you probably want an S at the end of that word because you use a plural verb. LLMs are exactly that. They're just saying more than the next character. Like it's probably S was plural. They're saying, oh, the next word you probably want is, the next thought you probably want is this, right? Why? Because the LLMs look you in the eye and they go, hey, I studied everything you stupid humans have ever written. I've listened to all the transcripts of your podcasts and your YouTube videos. Mm-hmm. I get you. I've studied your history, and I will pull that history into today for whatever you've asked me. But what they do not do is they do not look to the future. They cannot predict the future. They cannot say, how do I break that pattern? How do I push that frontier back, right? So our joke at the start of this little speech was, hey, LLM, write me a screenplay about an action hero, right? The LLM is going to say, okay, Stephen, yeah, I've looked at the 4,000 action movies that you've worked on or you've seen. I know what you want. You want a 35-year-old, scruffy beard, white guy, probably named Jack, who's got a boss who gives him shit. You know what I mean? Like, and they revert to the me. They're like, I see your pattern. I'll repeat it for you. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's a white guy who probably looks some cross between Tom Cruise and whoever that other dude that plays Jack Reacher, right? And that's what you get. But you would never get someone who's like, this is the new version of La Femme Nikita. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think humans are still valuable.
Yeah. And I guess it makes me wonder about...
Uh-oh.
I mean, because it seems to me that... well, I fear for what's going to happen with human beings, but it makes me...
We all.
Yeah, it just makes me wonder about the future of film, given that it seems the studios are leaning this way, right?
Yeah, and here's the thing: having worked in the studio, there is a large amount of negative sentiment of like, oh my God, you made Iron Man 19, like Robert Downey Jr.
Right, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like I was on Die Hard 5, straight up. It's an awful movie. I never saw the final cut. I couldn't bring myself to see the final cut. Okay, let's just talk honestly here. But here's the deal: we get the movies that we vote for. The dollar that we spend this week at a movie turns into the movie that next year we're going to get in the theater. So we can complain all we want. But just the fact that some of these movies make money, the studios don't care. They are for-profit businesses run by businessmen who don't see most. Do you think Rupert came to our premieres when I was at Fox? Do you think Rupert's like watching cuts of movies? He doesn't care. He gets a P&L handed to him once a week. And if the number's not right, someone gets fired. That's it.
That'll get old, though, don't you? Go ahead, Chris. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was gonna ask, when there's a movie like, I don't know, Paranormal Activity or like this past summer Obsession or Backrooms or something that's a little
the push the frontier fact. They broke the pattern.
Do they view that as an outlier and say, well, we know what works and what doesn't, and that's just what that movie popped for nothing? Or do they actually take note of that?
The tracking before the movie even comes out for something like Backrooms turns into your Monday morning conversations with your boss, the chairman of the studio, about like, why don't we have our Backrooms? This thing is tracking to open at 50 million next month. Da, da, da. You go scour every YouTube person that has two eyes and a heartbeat and find out who's got to go. They know. It's not. You don't have to wait for the box office. The tracking tells you. You're like, this thing's going to be a hit, and then every studio chases it. It's money. It's not show art. It's show business.
What goes into the tracking? I'm curious.
It is companies that are paid to go out there and survey people and ask them things like unaided awareness, like, hey, without prompting you, hey, Chris, what movies are coming out? And you say, oh, The Odyssey's coming out, and someone, so that's unaided. And then they'll do like aided awareness. Have you heard about Backrooms? Oh yeah, I have. So if you can only see one movie next weekend, what would that be? Okay, so number one trip. They do that. And then they sell those data right back to the studios so we can sit in the rooms and have our bosses beat us up and go like, why don't we have Backrooms? Why don't we have so-and-so? That's what it is.
Okay.
And if I were getting started now, as awful as this sounds, I would look to see how far could I push my creative idea before I needed a studio involved. Because film is an expensive medium. Expensive is code word for a lot of people put money in and have opinions and are going to tell you what to do.
Absolutely.
So as soon as you go and you go, you know what? Actually, if I go learn Kling and I go do this thing, blah, blah, and I get a new MacBook, for like $8,000, I could probably make half my movie or, something like that. And, you're going to revise it because writing is rewriting. But you get to actually execute it. That's unique in the history of film. Like, it's really, really rare. Like, you think about the amount of press. Do you remember Robert Rodriguez made this movie called El Mariachi?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Robert Rodriguez's whole thing was like, in a world where no one wanted to make a little movie about a weird Spanish, he was like, how can I just scrape together a little money and actually demonstrate I can make this? Now, most people right now, most young filmmakers that I meet, they're looking at how do I sell my script to a studio and get the studio behind me and then they have lots of money in it. Yeah, that lots of money means you're going to have lots of people telling you what to do. And at the end of the day, you're going to be at the premiere and you're going to be like, not exactly the movie I wanted to make. Not exactly the cast I wanted. I wanted the different ending. But they put $50 million into it, so they got to tell me what to do.
Which may be fine as an initial project for a young filmmaker, though, right?
Why?
I mean,
because if your first movie doesn't work, you're dead in the water.
Okay, that's fair too. That's fair too.
Who's going to hire you? You have no track record.
But
maybe
maybe a young filmmaker not give their best film. Maybe they have 3 ideas that are in various stages of development. And they decide they're going to develop, take their weakest one, but one that can pass muster, okay, and present that one to the studios. See if they can
I'm gonna push back. I rarely push back as strong as I'm going to, which is everybody you're competing against is putting forth their best idea.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
No one sets out to make a bad movie. There are a lot of bad movies. I've been involved in bad movies. No one sets out going, let's make a really bad movie. It's just really hard to make a good one. So if you start out with not your best idea because you're like, I'm going to hold my best ideas out, and the kids to your left and right are trying to do their absolute best, like, what?
Yeah.
That's not a recipe for success.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I'm just trying to think of ways that they can hang on to control. They can hang on to having some control over their art. At least they can
write a novel. Become a painter. Become a
well,
painter.
They can say, okay, well that wasn't my best one anyway, and that's the one. That's not really the one I wanted to do. Is this one anyway? And so at least I got some money out of this one, and I'm going to use that money for my best one. But I hear you.
Yeah, and that I do get, like, especially with writers, I do get some that are very precious. Mm-hmm. I just want to preserve the vision I have here. And the best advice is write it as a novel.
Oh, I like that.
Make a graphic novel, make a comic book, make a poem. Do something where you can issue the thing as your vision. Because you can't find even $1 million writer that goes, oh, that movie's exactly the way I wrote it.
Right.
No.
Yeah, right. If they're lucky, they can get, maybe there'll be a film adaptation. Maybe there'll be an adaptation based on the book. And
Yeah,
fine,
and
they
by the
won't
way,
have any control
you're
over the
right.
movie, but they will have at least written
Yeah,
the
and
story.
just a little legal advice. Your rights are much stronger if you publish your IP in another medium. Because if you sell the screenplay, they own it. The studio's like, thanks. If you write a book, they have to license the rights. And then your attorney says, great, when you all make a serial, we want a piece of that. When you all make action figures, we want a piece of that. If they buy your screenplay and all the underlying IP, then it's like, see you at the premiere.
Got it. Makes sense. Can you think of, actually, those were great actionable tips. Can you think of any other actionable tips for aspiring screenwriters? Chris, I don't know if you had any things before you wanted to jump to that, but.
Yes. Yeah, how do we limit this to 4 hours? Okay. Actionable tips. Number 1. I think we've belabored this point, but I'm just going to say, which is writing is rewriting. Do not be precious. You are going to look at what you wrote a week ago, realize how it could be better. You are hopefully going to give it to people who hate you. And they will say things, and it will help you to get better. Because you give it to your mom, you give it to your friends, and they will lie to you. Oh, it's really good. I loved it, blah, blah. Ignore everybody who likes you because they're not telling you the truth. They're just saying, I want to support you. So you've got to give it to people who are critical, who do not know you. And then when you get notes, when people who actively hate you say stuff, it is up to you to learn how to listen to that. Because, for example, they're going to give you notes. Oh, I hate this character. I hate this scene. Oh, that line is so corny. Blah, blah, blah. The problem may be that character or that scene or that line, or it may not be. And I'll give you an example. Cameron Crowe, who did Singles and Jerry Maguire and did not Say Anything. What was the other? Almost Famous, right? Amazing character writer, like really great character writer, filmmaker. Right? Mm-hmm. So he did a book where he interviewed Billy Wilder, the old director. It's a fantastic read. If you're a young filmmaker, you should read this. And Billy says something in there where he goes, third act problems are first act problems. And what he's saying to you is, you're going to have someone read your screenplay, go to the test screening of your rough cut, and they're going to tell you, oh, in the third act, I never believed that, Jenny would turn on her friend that way. Third act, I just didn't think he would defeat the dragon like that, right? And if you treat that third act problem as, well, then Jenny's got to do something awful in the third act so that, Mindy can tell her off. Or we're going to give him a bigger sword so he can kill the dragon more and more believably. What Billy Wilder is saying is, people will point to the third act because it's the last thing they saw. But the problem is in the first act. The problem is in the first act, you didn't set up that Jenny has a malicious side. So at the end of the story, people go, oh yeah, I had a friend like Jenny, and that's totally what I would have done at the end. In the first act, you got to show him wielding his sword, doing something like that. So in the third act, they go, oh yeah, I totally believe you could have killed the dragon. And that is the kind of thing you develop as you become a really good screenwriter, is you listen and you're like, thank you so much. Oh, that's a great note. It's great. That's great. And then you sit with it and you listen for the note behind the note. The note is not, I don't believe you could kill the dragon in the third act. It's his sword wasn't big enough. The note was, I didn't convince you in the first act that that's what he would be incapable of.
Got it.
Okay, so back to getting notes. How do you get somebody who hates you to read your writing in the first place?
I say hate just for the fun of it. I say hate, but you know what I mean. It's like discount your roommate, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your massage therapist, your mom. But if you can get it to someone that doesn't know you, like, oh hey, my girlfriend's friend is a librarian who loves reading romance novels. I wrote one. Can she just read this and I've never met the girl, but have her give her some notes. She might give you great notes. Like, oh, by the way, your storyline is ripped off from this romance novelist, or, this idea is missing from yours. It's really good in this other book. And you'd be like, oh, okay, cool. Because she doesn't have a stake in you. She's never going to meet you again. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And where you don't enter the script competitions, they're like, oh my God, there's so many of these shysters that'll just we'll, give us $150, send us your script. We'll send you official studio coverage, blah, blah, blah. And it's just a money-making machine for them. It leads nowhere. It leads poor people in Iowa emptying their bank accounts thinking I'm going to get studio coverage. And it's like some intern that got paid $20 or it's an AI.
Sometimes they don't even give you coverage. You just submit it, right? And there's an entry fee and you get no feedback.
Correctly.
Since you were in action, I'm curious because obviously I think a lot of writers are starting out will write something that's comedic or romantic, but when it comes to action, there's how to block out this action scene or I feel like there's a lot of things that can get in the way of a writer just writing or actually making all the ends meet in their story, like not knowing how the FBI works or how cops talk to each other or stuff like that. What is your advice on the kind of research part of writing like an action movie that has these different professions in it that you don't necessarily know anything about?
Yeah, and here's the thing. We talked earlier about there are people who watch movies and then write cop movies because they've seen cop movies. You know what I mean? And they have the texture of like photocopies. They're like, oh, it's sort of like that thing from Serpico, and it's sort of like the Dirty Harry scene. It's sort of like that thing from Heat, because they saw those movies, right? Mm-hmm. But you actually end up with that thing where it's like, damn, that felt real. Like, you ever see this movie End of Watch?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so a friend of mine wrote and directed that, right? And he had come from a very rough and tumble sort of life. He knew what those streets were about. Like, he wrote stuff because he's like, I lived there. And that authenticity comes through.
Yes.
So when you're talking about, oh, I want to write a cop movie or whatever, like, find someone. Find a person and go, hey, man, I'm super interested in doing this. Can I take you to lunch? And see if you can find someone that actually gives you authenticity, gives you a sense of, like, I'm a real person. And obviously, if you take all of their anecdotes, you're going to have to license their life rights. So you can't just, like, write everything the guy real tells you. But you can get a sense of, like, oh, so that's what you talk about, at the arrest, at the arraignment. This is what you talk about in the back of the place, whatever that is. That, it just rings. You can feel real. You can taste it when it's on screen.
Yeah. Because I think, I'd imagine that holds true for actors too, kind of, because I feel like Jake Gyllenhaal used to do interviews when End of Watch was coming out where he talked about the training. He was like, we went to a dojo and they would just have kids come in and fight. He was like, we would show up every morning and just get beat up by a bunch of kids who were learning martial arts.
Yeah. So for some of those movies, that is important, and David really wanted that sort of sense of authenticity. Yeah. So. But anyway, as you talk about writing, a cop movie or something, try and go back to first principles. Don't just write off movies you've seen.
Okay. Mm-hmm. I guess maybe back to the flow state thing, just managing around different distractions or things that pull you out of the flow state. Because I always felt like those kind of details that we were just talking about would be something that would make you, if you were just trying to write your script or trying to brainstorm and you just go, oh wait, I don't know what the FBI procedure for this is. Now I'm like, I'm out of my flow state in a sense because I'm just thinking, or doom scrolling obviously is a huge thing. And
the flow state, it doesn't just mean your hands are on the keys and you're typing dialogue. You know what I mean? Like, flow state means you're in the work, whether that is playing NBA Finals basketball, painting Guernica, figuring out theoretical physics, whatever it is. It just means you're at work. So if part of what you're doing is like, hey, let me go and look up this thing and immerse myself. Like, I was talking to a group of period novelists, and there's a large amount of what they do that is steeping themselves in the authenticity of Elizabethan England and stuff like that. So they have those details to drop that feel real. Not like if I wrote something on Elizabethan England, it would feel like I had watched a Simpsons episode about it and I was trying to copy that. You know what I mean? Like, there's that reality. So, yeah, you're right. If your research is, I'm going to go on Instagram and try and find Elizabethan, jokes or something, like, you're wasting your time. But you can easily, while you're in a flow state, go like, oh, let me go read this. Okay, that's really inspiring. And you take that over to the next screen and put it there. So it's not just the art of creation. It's when you're in the work and you're not self-judging. You're like in flow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Gotcha.
It reminds me of Michael Jordan, when Michael Jordan was playing Portland in the when the Bulls were playing Portland in the finals decades ago, and Michael Jordan started out hitting 3 consecutive threes, I think it was 3 or 4 consecutive threes, and he even shook he did like this, you know, he motioned
to Magic Johnson,
out,
who was the NBC announcer, I think. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And they said he was in a zone. They said Michael Jordan's in a zone. That's what they called it. So now I understand what flow state is, being in the zone, I guess.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Jordan's quote about when I'm in the zone, it's just me and the ball, is a very reductive but elegant way of saying when I'm there in that flow state, the fans are not in my view. Like, even the opposing team is not in my view, because honestly, if I control this ball, we will win. This is the only real truth. Did this ball go where I want it to go? It's not about my teammate. It's not about the fans. It's not about the scoreboard. It's not about the defender. It is just I control this ball. And that's what he said. My world reduces down. It's just me and the ball.
Yeah. I remember the movie For the Love of the Game, I think was Kevin Costner, I think was the star. Yeah. And he would he was pitching a perfect game, and he would just be like, clear the mechanism, and then like the crowd would disappear. And I just feel like,
I've not seen that movie, but that's the essence of it. And that was when I told my friend about my experience on that flight, and he was like, that was a flow state. I was like, that was amazing. Like, I couldn't tell you the name of the dude in the seat next to me. I couldn't tell you if the drink card had come down the aisle. I couldn't tell you what time it was. But I finished my designs. I really liked them. And that's one of the things Mihai said. He said, when you're in a flow state, distractions kind of fall away. He's like, you don't keep track of time. You're in the work. You become one with the work. And he said, at the end of it, you may have done your best work in less time, but instead of feeling like tired and depleted, like, oh God, that was so hard, you would actually feel uplifted. He said you could feel a sense of joy. And that's like a big difference between a flow state and just grinding it out all night.
Yeah. To be fair, there is not to belabor this.
Let's be unfair. Come on, let's be unfair.
Okay, I guess that's a stupid statement, but you have to, for a writer especially, and frankly, frankly for any kind of work, you have to create the space for that, right? Because I'm thinking about, the writer, in terms of a writer getting into a flow state, they have to also minimize distractions, right? In order to get there.
Very good point. Very good point.
In order to get there. Even in terms of a musician who's working on their craft and they're practicing, they need to be in the space that allows them to do that by minimizing distractions. Once you're there, then you can enter that flow state and accomplish whatever you accomplish in that space. Right? I mean, I would think that's the case.
Yeah, I'll tell you a funny anecdote. I know this is a long episode, but when I grew up in like rural Virginia, right? Mm-hmm. I went to USC and then started working in film. One of the first things I did in film was produce digital visual effects, like CG effects for movies. Mm-hmm. I ended up doing the digital effects for Independence Day, for which we won the Academy Award, which is amazing. Takes a village. It was a great experience, helped my career a lot, right? So I became very close with the director, producer, writer of the film, Roland Emmerich, and writer, producer, Gene Devlin. I remember when they were going off to write, they apparently wrote a lot of their stuff at this white marble villa in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, some vacation rental, right? So Roland had gone to his assistant and said, hey, starting this weekend, rent the place in Puerto Vallarta. We need you to go write. She came back and said, it's rented. It's like an Airbnb. Someone else had rented it first. Roland called John Deemer, who was his entertainment attorney. Mm-hmm. I was like, John, buy the villa. And by the end of the day, Roland owned a $5 million villa in Puerto Vallarta. I, little kid from Virginia, was like, what just happened? Like, what the? Huh? So I went to Dean because I had a closer relationship with him. And I was like, you got to help me understand this. Like, Roland just bought a $5 million house so you guys can go write? What? And Dean sent this to me. He said, you know what? There's a room there. where in the morning the light comes in over the pool. And in that room, we never think about studio notes we're going to get, cast availabilities, our agents, budgets. We just write the film that we would want to see. Mm-hmm. So it's worth it to us to have that environment for that.
Yeah.
And as you guys know, they went down there, like 6-7 weeks later, came back with a script that became the third highest grossing movie in film history at the time. It worked for them. They knew their thing. And doesn't mean it has to be a beautiful villa. It's just when you find that place you're in the zone, like you said, Reba, like minimize distractions. You don't need to have like files of everything around. Like find a place where it's quiet for your mind and use that. Leverage that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you so much, Stephen.
Thank you guys for having me.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
Thank
of course.
you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Great.
Thanks so much for listening to the Cup of Tea Critiques podcast. Be sure to follow this show so you don't miss the next episode. You can stay in the loop on all things COTC by subscribing on our website at cupofteacritiques.com. Find us on TikTok and Letterboxd as well. For Reba, Terry, and Chris, I'm Brandon. We'll see you next time for another deep look with a deep brew.